go ahead and kick us off, Brother Timothy. Thank you all.
All right. So, as we've come together and been working together on um, really expanding some of the efforts that Father's House Restoration Ministries and even the church and just others that are connected to Father's House, it's been a privilege to be able to go deep into forming something called Father's House Oroville Community Land Trust, and we're going to explain what that is today. This is being recorded for future benefit as well. So get your questions ready, take notes, get your phones out and research things as we're talking, even if you want. But we're here to serve and to explain and to really resource the expansion efforts of Father's House Restoration Ministries and now the Community Land Trust. So this is going to be a fun adventure. Let's do a little flashback in time. Go ahead and go. There you go. Now we're back. Good. Next slide is about Father's House Restoration Ministries. Just kind of a a journey in time for us. Last 3 decades have been amazing. Cleaning up tons of trash all over the city, taking one block at a time for Jesus. A lot of faith-driven programs, of course, businesses like Yoville and Lord's Gym, just growing, developing. A lot of nonprofit programs, including 100 beds of low-income housing, food bank, School of Transformation, of course. Um, and then these events, these amazing events where tens of thousands of people will come out and experience the love of Jesus in one way, shape, or form. Um, and just the ability to impact our community, um, that developing animal therapy, community garden, farming, just all the different pieces and parts that are coming together because of the vision. It's just fun to be able to kind of put on one slide like what we've been able to work at over the last several decades. Um, Pastor Steve, I'd like to ask you to share just briefly how we ended up connecting. Um, we're going to share about CMG, Conscious Markets Group, here in just a minute, but how did we end up even meeting? Those that are watching the recording, those that are here live right now, can you share just a little bit of how this came about?
Well, my memory says that I went to Transform Our World in San Jose, and Tim either was at that one or he came in contact with knowledge of us through us sharing on the stage and doing. There was a video made by Transform Our World about what we're doing here in Oroville, and he called me and then came down and we met out at the property and began to talk about what we're doing. I still had no concept of what he's talking about. What we're doing today. That I never had any idea or even a foggy dream of it. And then Tim put us in contact through a continued communication, just through Messenger, meeting at the property as he comes through town to go visit his daughter in Sacramento on Thursdays. He stopped here, me and him met. Then continuing to talk, I got to meet Ifani through conscious market groups and then the rest of their team. And we started talking about building this because Oroville is a opportunity zone and it's ripe for a community land trust in an opportunity zone to do great things and have other people use their money that would have been taxes, I think, and give donations to help you build the housing and not just apartments to rent. There's a rental side of low income housing, and then there's an ownership side of low income housing. Many of you in the room, I dream for you to own houses, and you can't. They're too expensive unless something like this comes along that provides the ability for you to one day buy a house. And um, so it's going to start small with rental. It's going to start small with increasing the housing needs for, I mean, if another church had a housing need, and we have been in contact with some Oroville church that had housing need and land, and so this provides a vehicle for us to go forward, and that's how they presented it to me, and I said this. I was very confused. It took me weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm not generally confused by housing This confused me. I didn't understand. I have a man in my life named Ed that I lean on tremendously for tax stuff and charitable contribution stuff. And so he didn't get it and he couldn't help me. And I was sitting there and one day finally I made him wait 2, 3 months. And then one day I just called it. I mean, I really, it came into view. I began to see it. And I called Afani and said, yep, we're in. And we went for when we began the investment to go forward towards this. Is that good?
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Pastor
Excellent.
Steve. And
Excellent.
with that, Ifani's going to share a little bit about CMG, Conscious Markets Group, and how we've formed a partnership in order to help make this happen more effectively, more efficiently, and just make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So, Ifani?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that introduction, Steve. And it just moved me just in the spirit, just remembering everything that we've been working on and thinking about the what the Lord has deposited in me to launch CMG when I did, to calling me to build cities of refuge and deluge. And just it's dawned on me ever more just how relevant that is even more now as we're seeing different disasters, natural disasters happening. Investors are coming to me. Investors are literally looking for exactly what we've been building for the last 2 years because of what they're seeing happening. And they're looking at new novel solutions. And even these are some things that your most kind of basic, or not your most basic, but your most general lawyer may have never even have seen some of these things like community land trust before. And so this is something that it's been around for decades. We'll talk about the community land trust model in a little bit more, a little bit later. But it's really the combination of tools, impact tools that the Lord has given us over the multiple years since we launched, to really bring these things together in a way that's never been seen before, to create a bridge from institutional capital down to the ground floor. And I'll tell you right now, I'll give you an example of LA. I'm seeing institutional capital organize, coming to me asking how they can invest in LA. And that same conversation, I'm telling them about Oroville and telling them about the opportunity to, for example, to invest in tiny homes, and which are also useful because they can be set up quickly to recover from disasters and things of that nature, and can be protect low income families to be able to get home ownership opportunities. So these are some of the things that the downloads that the Lord God has given us, and that we called us to make sure we implement to wherever He called us to go. And so this is just obedience as well as being completely spirit led. In fact, I told them the other day when I was on a call with retail investors, and I mentioned to Pastor Steve that somebody raised their hand and said, "Hey, actually, I had never mentioned Oroville." We were talking about tiny homes, and someone raised their hand and said, "Hey, actually, I'm a part of a church with 22 acres in Oroville." And this was a completely unrelated call, not even California focused call. So the Lord God has called us to Oroville to help here clearly, to build something together with the churches here, leading with Father's House, and to do something for generations to come. And so about CMG, we're a real estate investment management company. We're bringing 90 plus years of experience in community advisory, financial services, nonprofit and faith-driven advisory, and engineering. And we're a team of spirit-led servant leaders, visionary yet practical in how we go about inclusive community building advisory, and have helped nonprofits as much as quadruple their annual funding, and help municipalities save money as well as to increase their impact as well. So many people want to know who is on the founding board of the Community Land Trust. So the Father's House Oroville Community Land Trust founding board brings about over 150 years of experience across real estate, finance, community and economic development, civic advisory and engineering, and investment banking, marketing, and communications, including faith and nonprofit advisory. And you can see that represented in the individuals here, and Pastor Steve Orsillo, Kathy Macy, Eric Van Cleve, Beth Perry, who you all may be familiar with of the Oroville community, as well as the CMG managers, Ifani Jemmy, myself, Timothy Morgan, and Dr. Janice Ferris-Samani, who couldn't be with us today as she teaches a course on Fridays, but she is a long tenured community advisor and professor, as well as a civic engineer and who was also on the board of the Alfred Baptist Church, and managing over $40 million budget for different churches that focus on community development over her history. And so we're so happy that we have a great team, including advisors and shareholders who are at CMG. I forgot to mention those as well, but with real estate background as well as investor relationships. All right, so enough jargon, right? So what is, let's get into definitions. What is a community land trust? A community land trust is a nonprofit organization formed to build affordable housing, um, while holding on to the majority of the ownership of that land and leasing it to developers and home buyers, as well as taking in grants and and parallel to investors to acquire and develop more land and more properties. So to learn more about it, you'll see restoreoroville.org/CLT is our web's link. And then there's also some links on there where you can learn more about CLTs from other research sources. So what are the goals of the Father's House Community Land Trust? Timothy, I'll pass that over to you and let you go ahead and take that.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line goals, right? Like what's the purpose? What's the goals? What's the reason for putting something like this together? It's to create more housing. I mean, like Pastor Steve said, if we see, it's not if, it's when we see growth happen in let's say, for example, School of Transformation and some of the other ministry efforts going through Father's House and Father's House Restoration Ministries and even partnering ministries, we're going to need more housing, right? So at the end of the day, that's one of the main features of a community land trust is to be able to create more affordable versions of those houses, right? And it creates multiple opportunities for different kinds of housing. So there's a flexibility and an ability to do that well. Home ownership itself, counseling, education, job opportunities, everything that kind of improves our lives in the region. Collaboration to bring those purpose-driven like investors and donors and others who would want to infuse capital and really resource this expansion effort. And if you want to think of it more like an expansion vehicle, that's really what we're talking about. And it, at the end of the day, at the end of the kind of the journey, it creates sustainable communities. The communities are bought in. They have a sense of ownership. They do have ownership. It's an actual real deal way to say this is my community. I'm part of this. And we'll talk later about just how to participate and the additional benefits that come with that. But ultimately, these are the goals that you see on the screen here. And remember, write down those questions because we're going to have a time of questions and answers later. Okay. Next slide. All right. So stability. We all know that in our families, in our living situations, that stability is a key. If we're worried about too many things, it's hard for us to grow spiritually, financially, emotionally. We need stability. It's an important thing, and there is stability at the Father's house, but we want to expand that and create more opportunity for that. Affordable housing for low and lower income, workforce housing, that kind of a thing is really where we focus. It's something that is a passion of ours, right? Options include standard rentals and mortgages with community guidelines, of course. You could do lease to own type of options. These are all possibilities. These are all part of the governance possibilities of a community land trust. So it creates stability ultimately when it comes right down to it. Okay, Fani?
What was that?
All right. Fani, do you want to speak to the kind of the voice and the way by which somebody can be heard in this type of structure?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. So how we allow your voice to be heard, and that's so important part of why we go with the community land trust structure and are a great advocate of it, is your ability to vote on decisions that affect the community land trust, to participate in the meetings and contribute to, as well to some of the decisions that are around the board members and things of that nature. And to be a member, you have to contribute a minimum of either 4 volunteer hours or $100 is what we're currently set for annually. And you also get many other benefits, such as first view of available housing, the ability to have be with like-minded individuals, participate in fun activities that will be happen and be funded by things like grants, participate in great programs like we mentioned and such. So we'll go more in detail in that in the next slide. So I'll go ahead and pass it over back to you, Tim.
Yeah, I want to mention here too, as we move to the next visual, many of you already volunteer for much more than 4 hours. So to some degree, you're in the room because you probably already qualify, and so this is really just a great way to get additional benefits to your lives as you continue to grow and minister in the region. And it's all about people, right? We want to include kind of this picture of some folks connecting and let's talk about growth. So growth that empowers. Um, Long-term growth, things like improving your credit, making sure that you can qualify for some type of home ownership in the future if that's part of what you want. Skills training, job creation, counseling. These are all part of the DNA of Father's House Restoration Ministries and Father's House anyway. We're just enhancing that and creating more opportunity for those kind of things. And there's other uh, adjacent programs that can help with that. Even other funding possibilities, which uh, is mentioned here too, both private funding like you and me, folks like us, and there's also public funding that comes from other entities and other places. So down payment assistance can be a part of that, building that stability we talked about, and reviving our communities one person at a time, which is part of our DNA anyway. All right,
Awesome.
so
So
what's an opportunity zone, Afani? Can you explain this a little bit so that we can get our heads around it?
sure, yeah. So you all have probably heard this term mentioned a few times. So opportunity zones are the tax incentives that was authorized in 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and it basically created these zones that are designated that encourage investors with capital gains to invest in low income and undercapitalized communities. So this is great, especially when you partner this with things like the rural funding that the government has and take advantage of it from a certain perspective. But this is particularly a special program because it's a private sector. It's not government funding, but it is a tax benefit to private investors. And so we will talk more about that on an investor dinner. We have an investor dinner coming up in I think 2 or so weeks. That's going to be focused on anybody, investors, donors, even stakeholders who just want to contribute and even introduce others in their network and see how they can participate.
Yep, we can all participate or or invest in various ways, and so that's one of the ways and benefits of the opportunity zone, which much of Oroville is in, is an opportunity zone.
That's right. So pretty much all of Oroville is an opportunity zone. We don't know when they designated it, who designated it, but it's usually given based on some political process. And so somebody had the connection and was able to get that designation of the opportunity zone in Oroville. And so as you have different outsiders coming in and just buying up and investing, our model is to invest through and with the community. And so I believe God positioned us to be sort of an offset to that sort of thing in the world. So what do we do exactly? The first step is to align purpose-driven capital. So CMG to help align the right funding and resources to fuel sustainable community-driven solutions. So for example, if we were to go after a government grant to give the advisory to know what are the restrictions and is this a fit for our faith and what we're called to do in the community? If it's a private investor, same evaluation, are they a fit? And then bring in investors, but first mobilizing the local affinity investors and the local stakeholders and donors, and then using that so that you come from a strong negotiating standpoint as you go out to bringing in more institutional investors, and you have more community equity built in already.
And what that
That's how
means
we.
to us here, Ifani, in Oroville is if we know somebody or if we have some ability to contribute financially, then there are ways to make sure that that goes and is designated toward the exact purpose that we want it to have, the
Mhm.
exact impact. And there's deeper conversations that can be had over dinners and these kind of things. But bottom line is if we have resources or if we know somebody who has resources and we want to literally invest in the kingdom in this way, this
Mhm.
is a really good option.
That's right. And so it includes launching a qualified opportunity fund, which we'll be doing in the next month so that the investors can start to come in. And what that does is it kind of separates the investors from the donors so that the investors can still generate a very attractive return over a 10-year or longer term period. And the donors can get their goal, which is tax mitigation. All right. So, step two, building the housing and the programs. The most key essential part, actually doing the work, providing affordable living spaces, vocational and financial skills training, as you mentioned, and building a strong network of local builders and innovations such as tiny homes and things of that nature as well. So, creating new pathways of personal and family and financial development, as well as the nonprofit Father's House. And so this is a nice little picture, a nice example of a tiny home village in Michigan. We visited it in person and just gives example of just the higher quality of living that can be had as compared to maybe a mobile park, but still affordable and provides home ownership where you actually have capital appreciation if you own it, whereas as opposed to like a trailer, which depreciates in value over time. The other things, thriving and reviving our outcome. Oroville and its residents flourishing for generations, with the goal being of better qualities of living, purpose, and always belonging, as well as experiencing more abundance in all realms of life. And that's really what the deluge refers to. When God called me to build cities of deluge, that's what it came out to be. And that's really that deluge of abundance comes from the deluge of the spirit. And that's why we ensure that anything we do has the faith at the center of it. And so that is kind of our overview. Tim, do you want to go ahead and talk about opportunities to get involved?
Yeah, and at this point, this is where we're going to start asking, what questions do you have? Um, what comments, thoughts, questions? And we need somebody to start off those questions. So make sure and have one ready, somebody.
That's
Um,
right. And I think we had these three opportunities to be involved, which are really the membership currently, signing up, which is available on the website. Number two, the ability to participate in School of Transformation obviously is ready there. And the additional learning opportunities that will come from the programs that we'll be able to launch here soon. And then, of course, the investors and donors opportunity to align their capital with community impact. So those are the three other ways to get involved as we move into now the Q&A. So we're all in, right? We hope you will be as well, and we're here to listen and collaborate. So go ahead, open up the floor for Q&A.
If you have questions, Michelle will bring you a microphone.
Okay. Before we go into questions, we just want to let you guys know, if Yanni and Timothy, we're going to lose visual for a minute to see if we can fix the visual, but we will still be talking.
okay. Fani, while they're doing that, go ahead and bring up the slide with the QR code on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that way people can take a quick picture of that slide, or you can type in restoreoroville.org/CLT to learn more and to go ahead and just put your name in the hat, apply, and see if you qualify for at least a membership to this community land trust. There's really no downside. There's a lot of upside there for individuals and families in Oroville.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sam.
Hi,
Um,
Sam.
I have three quick questions. Uh, First quick one is, does the current administration, like any of their plans, does this affect, because you said it was like a government program, does it affect it, like help boost it, anything like that? Do you guys know?
Ifani?
Yeah, so I was going to take that. So absolutely. So this boosts it. So one thing that was a concern for investors was the expiration of the Opportunity Zone program, which would give you only till the end of, I believe, 2026 to invest, or well, not the end. Well, that would be the capital gains that you could use is from the end of 2026 at the latest. So now we believe that it's going to be expanded. There's a lot of bipartisan support, and so we believe because it was launched by Trump in 2017 that it will be expanded, extended um, uh, probably this year. Most people believe it'll be extended and it'll be OZ 2.0, which will be more focused on social impact. And so they've proposed a bill that is more about the community development, and they also have to track the social impact, which is something CMG already does. You know, we get paid to advise groups on how to better track social impact specifically. So we're very excited because we know exactly how to do that for the program, and so we're very well positioned. I think God already put that in us before they even started to work on that bill. And so we were looking at the Opportunity Zone program from a spiritual lens to see that, hey, you know what? While this has a bad connotation for some towns and where they've just kind of just given the Opportunity Zone designation to like maybe a college town or something like that, this used with the right tools and spirit can be extremely impactful. It can be advanced for its original purpose. And so that's kind of how we've been able to take it and put in all these social impact aspects where we have to have a nonprofit involved, this, that, and another, and be able to track. If we were to show you in a more detailed way what we can track, all the community impact and the reporting that goes along with that. So basically to say that we're well positioned to be able to for the current
Yeah.
administration.
And it looks like, bottom line, it looks like current administration is favorable toward extending. No guarantees, but it's definitely looking that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Great. My next question is, so, I mean, like you said on another random call you had that somebody else was talking about Oroville and what they have. So since Oroville is being talked about as an opportunity zone, I'm sure other people are interested, like outside of your guys' organization. What kind of hurdles does that present as like more talk it just happens of Oroville being an opportunity zone and other companies and organizations wanting to come in?
Well, yeah, I think it has been one actually, I think since the beginnings, 2017, or maybe it was designated in 2020. So that was the only two times it could have been designated. So Oroville definitely has been for at least the 5 or 8 year period, or 5 or 9 year period since the launch of the program. And so you've probably seen, like we've seen in town, all the developments that have been popping up, apartment buildings. And so how we come differently from that is we're looking to build the housing that is more in need to have a higher quality standard, but still dignified, and also for lower for affordable housing as well, which is the key. And so we're not going to be setting up skyscrapers at that doesn't seem to be the need. What we do is evaluate the need, which we started with through Father's House as our main uh, way of hearing from the community. And so, of course, the community land trust will now take over that role to be able to hear the community's voices as to the development needs. That
Wonderful.
answer your question? Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry. And then the last question I had is like, okay, so this is the second time we've had one of these meetings. Like, according to your guys's projected plan, how soon will we actually be seeing like whether it's us built, like how soon will we actually tangibly be seeing these things happen? Like if everything goes according to plan.
I got to
Mm-hmm.
say here, Afani, we're optimists because we are faith driven. Uh, the timelines, we'll try to give some timelines that are more conservative at this point, but we
Mm-hmm.
also know that God put fast forwards things very often. So, Afani, how would you answer that in a more conservative way?
That's right. You know, I think it's the conservative answer is really it completely depends on the Oroville community for our ability to organize and bring together first the affinity investors who, like we said, we want to make sure the community investors are locked in first. That is so key to make sure you preserve the long-term generational wealth in the community as well as the interests and goals, right? So that also creates a negotiating table. Whereas if other investors come in, they're coming in at maybe not as great terms later on, because you have built in, a great base of organizing.
And when
And
you
this is
say
what the Lord
affinity
showed me.
investors, you're talking about local people who are already connected to Oroville in some way, or to the church,
That's
or to
right.
a
That's right.
ministry or a business in some way. They have an
Or the
affinity.
surrounding community. Yep. Hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, as I'm walking towards them, would you guys mind taking down the slide? I think we had time to do the QR code so that we can see you guys, like stop sharing because we would love to be able to see you as you were
Oh, you can't see us?
speaking. Well, more like we just see
You
this,
just
just there you go.
there you
Thank
go.
you so much. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So I would like to know if farmland is included in these types of investments. If it was a program where we could develop, farmland that would serve the community, is that something that's on the table?
Absolutely, that can be, yes, because you know, for example, if you look at a lot of the rural funding that's available, for example, USDA and things of that nature, there is a lot of funding available for farming and that kind of development. And opportunity zone funds are often used to make farming investments. It just depends on the right investor alignment, and you can structure it as it's its own project, right? It doesn't have to be the entire theme, and so you can have some investors participate who like farming, for example. So based on the needs of the community that comes through from the membership as well as from the leadership and just the voices that come into the picture, that's how we'll be able to figure out how do we prioritize the assets. This is what the asset manager role does. How do we prioritize the investment? And the board of the CLT is the one that makes the voting on those investment decisions.
Okay, you may have just answered my second question, and
Okay.
that is the money that's coming in, does it go into a general fund and then we vote on the projects that are moving forward or the purchases that are made? Or is that done by, the major shareholders, and how does that play out?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Great question. So it depends on where the source of funding is. But basically, the basic answer to that question is it's governed by the board of the CLT. And so if there's a source of funding, if the project, the board's level of control over the project is very important. And so that's where CMG comes in, is because we make sure that the projects that are being done, this is another interesting and very important point. The projects that were going to be done, because of Father's House great background in construction and development, will be primarily from the initial stage proprietary projects from away. So that word just means Father's House, obviously leading the construction, the development within their skill set, and so that it's in-house, and so that we have control over the property as the general partner. Now, if you have something where you're partnered with a developer or partnered with an investor, now there's a little bit of other people's say, but that's where you have the community land trust is great, because you have a better structure than ever existed to deal with that. You have control over the land, and you can dictate the rules of engagement from that point.
I see Eric's hand being raised. Michelle, is this a good time for Eric to pop in?
I was just gonna ask Eric if he wanted to share or ask a question.
Good morning. Yeah, Eric Smith, Oroville Area Chamber of Commerce. Let me turn down my computer volume. It's better for me to listen, but not so much when I'm talking. Creates an echo. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I think it's a very novel and interesting concept. When it comes to the opportunity zones, if you look at that, it's somewhat of a compact area in Oroville. There's big chunks of our community that are not included within the borders of that program. So one question is there an area that's kind of identified? For an example, South Oroville, or South Side as we lovingly call it, there's a lot of what they call non-conforming lots. because of their overall size, around 4,000 to 5,000 square foot lots. And there's a lot of these lots that are now just vacant and open. So just kind of getting a high level concept, is it that you're looking to perhaps to purchase those, through this type of a program, to try to do a lot, like a land scoop, if you will, and then development program, and the kind of what is the overall kind of concept or plan here to take advantage of the program? I think the program is amazing, and there's certainly, as you pointed out earlier, we've done several apartment projects, but there the land is identified. There is help, like for example with CDBG grants, those types of things that come alongside, but you have a property identified, you have investors identified, and then the project kind of moves forward. Here it seems to be a little bit more potentially complex, unless there is a specific bank of land that's been identified for this type of a project. So I'm just kind of curious, what that, how much thought has been put into that. And then coming alongside, you also have the zoning issues, like you've mentioned several times, the tiny houses, which are at this point in time with the current zoning would be somewhat problematic. Not to say that there can't be that conversation, but maybe kind of give a 30,000 foot of the overall project or idea that's kind of being put together here.
Excellent question. Yeah, very good question. So we've been navigating already some of these challenges. So we're setting up our initial projects to be able to present to investors over the next several weeks. So we will have the first investor dinner in 2 weeks, where we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll have some initial projects kind of overview at that point in time. But basically, we're dealing with that issue of getting the legal lots, and going through that right now. And luckily, the county is moving fast enough, from a certain perspective. It's moving fast enough, I believe, from a quarterly perspective, to be able to still be able to forecast the investments and know that we'll be able to move forward with the first project in the next quarter, according to Pastor Steve, who's really active in that.
Can I jump in on that question?
Yeah.
So Eric, the lots he's talking about are city lots, 44 by 108, right around the church here. We built many, many houses on them. And the ability to build low-income housing is much more difficult today with the costs, but donated land is way better. The ability for investors to pay for the land, to get the cost way down to where low-income, so they qualify as low-income sales or any of those. The tiny home village that's first proposed is county. It's right on the outside of Bagot Marysville Road. Eric is also a city council member, and so
Awesome.
the city he's very familiar with. This one's just right off. You could throw a rock and hit the city land, but it's a county, and it's zoned for multis, and so it would be perfect for the tiny home village of a certain size. Of course, the zoning and everything's going to determine what that turns out to be. But where we're at is that even buying existing apartment complexes and things with this kind of money puts it in a place where you can have low income subsidized housing for the people you want to bring here. If it was Russian refugees, or if it was a select type of people, you would have low income housing. We haven't settled on anything yet. When we talk about a tiny home village, we're talking about something we're looking at, and we have a ground that would work. And then when you brought up the city lots, we have been thinking about those, Eric, and how they would be perfect for building smaller, like the ones I just finished are 1,250 square feet, and they'd be perfect for those kinds. But they also would be the only ones you'd be able to do housing that your mortgage would be reasonable to be called low income. Does that make sense? Yeah, I hope it answers some of what you're asking. So nothing is set in stone, Eric. It's all just the ideas, but that idea of those city lots in Southside, that really is a viable idea for the future that we're very greatly considering.
Also worth noting that the opportunity zone maps are pretty, they're very well laid out, specific. So Afani has the most up-to-date maps. We have the most up-to-date maps at CMG. And so we'll be able to communicate with you, Eric, and Pastor Steve, of course, we already have been, and others around like what is actually going to qualify for this versus this.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll make a quick comment as well on the opportunity zone thing too. So the opportunity zone is a fund is a great way for that. But then also, for example, if you're acquiring an existing property, it's not a good fit for a fund, or if it's outside of the opportunity zone location. However, there you can have up to 30% of those non-conforming investment in the fund, number one. But then number two, we're not limited to just do opportunity zone investments. That's why you have the community land trust and then the opportunity zone fund separate, because then the community land trust and developers, including Father's House Construction and Development Company, can build housing anywhere, not just in opportunity zone, and investors can come directly into the project. Yes.
That's good.
Just wanted to add a comment to that. I've been talking for years about how it would be great to see an investment firm or several come into the South Side with all of those lots. But I think Pastor Ursillo mentioned just the cost of land. Yeah, I'm at a point where whatever the city has, we can virtually make that where the cost is, virtually nil. Because as you know, in the building, it's all about the cost of building the structure. The land is kind of secondary. That cost is pretty minimal. It's all the permitting and just the actual physical cost of the structure. But Southside, it definitely needs a renaissance. Kind of a fresh kickstart. So however I can, from where I sit, facilitate this idea. It's going to take something innovative and kind of out of the box to be attractive for investors. That's one of the challenges because of the suppressed land value. When people look at building something or doing something, from an investment standpoint, if an area has a low market value, then investors typically shy away from that. So this could be a creative way to change those dynamics. So anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'll finish with my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Come to the investment dinner, Eric.
Nah.
I don't know if you heard me or not.
Let's get that menu.
Eric, did you hear Steve invite you
menu.
to the investment dinner? Okay. This is Nicole. I just am a little unsure on the investor side of things. So I get that, all of us in the room are listening to this, but there might be like 4 people in this room that even could be on a level of what you're referring to. So where do these investors come from? And are you working on behind the scenes to present these ideas to individuals that would benefit from these investments? Or is it on us as potential members to bring investors into the program or both?
Definitely both. But Tim, do you want to take this, or should I start? Okay, go ahead.
I think that it's interesting because I'm more on the investor relations side, and then Ifani is really experienced on the logistics and the legal aspects of those kind of things too. So ultimately, it's a both and scenario where we talk about affinity investors or donors. Those are slightly different terms, right? So you got the donors and you got the investors who want to see a return on their investment, right? Donors want to see a spiritual return. Some investors want to see a double bottom line return, both spiritual and financial, right? So there's a slight difference there, but investors and donors will be interested in some of these dinners. A lot of them will either come from Oroville proper, or they're already connected to folks that So we're asking you right now to be praying about people that that would want to participate in some way with their resources. And so it's going to come from you. And then I'm personally, CMG team, we're putting our feelers out right now ahead of time to say, like, look, when we get our first round or our first tranche of investments start coming in, maybe some donated land, a little bit of investment, We have some grants on the horizon. There's some things starting to come into place, and we got a location. Like things are starting to really get more detailed and solidified. Then that second layer of investment is more possible at that point.
Yeah,
We can't guarantee a specific number, but we can tell you that the more attractive it gets, the more it becomes magnetic to other investments, especially after the first initial investments start coming in locally.
hmm
Then now others start going, wait a minute, something good's happening right there. To Eric's point earlier, hey, there's
hmm
something happening here where I think I want to be involved. Like one of the gentlemen that I'm talking to right now has family that's from this region. So he has an affinity, but
yep,
he happens to live somewhere else. So if we all know people like this is where we want to start inviting them to dinners.
yep.
Can I jump in?
Yep.
So, every single person hearing this and online here, your purpose for being here could be to invest, but definitely every one of us is we will meet people in the near future. And if we don't know about something like this, we can't say it. But if we do know about something like this, even though I can't, we got Eric's on, other city council members are on, banks are on, and it's just this small town. Reputation is everything, and so the more people that have this knowledge of this,
Oh
um,
yeah.
people in the crowd who own insurance businesses, people who have construction businesses, they will run across people who will have capital gains, who will have funds to donate. Some banks have to donate in community development, and so if they don't know about us, if your name's not in the hat, you can't be chosen.
hmm
And so by putting this out there and constantly telling people about it and having more and more of these meetings and dinners, it's just more people have the ability to tell other people who do have. Um,
Yes.
there's one of our bankers right there. And so it's really important that more and more people know what this is so that our name's in the hat when there's an ability. And that's the community investment part. What Tim was just talking about was bringing them in from far and wide who may or may not have an affinity or just want to maybe just want to be involved in tiny home villages or want to be involved in helping young families buy houses. It's just we don't know, but if you don't put the word out, we'll never know.
Oh, amen.
Well said.
Thank you. That is it right there. It's positioning for what God wants to do, and
Yeah.
it's actually incredible power. It's incredibly powerful what God does when you do that obedience. Like we talked about the nonprofit we helped. Their typical annual fundraise was about 4 million, and last year we advised them, not even for the full year. I think it was like quarter and a half, and they quadrupled their funding. There was a Joseph effect. They had over $15 million in unrestricted funding by the end of 2023. And so to do affordable housing, and that was for their first fund ever. And so it's really important to position. You never know who's in, you know that there are asset holders in the community, but more importantly, opening that door and having a strategic guidance that will say, if there's, not enough people coming to bear, okay, well, we know now we need to go to the next affinity town nearby, or we know we need to go to more national faith-driven investors. But it has to start with, like Pastor Steve just said, it's like the vision of a snowball, the generating of more and more of that snowball. And that's how assets grow. They just multiply and they just duplicate. And Steve knows a little bit about that, having built so many dozens of homes in Oroville. So I'm very excited to help you do it again. Thank you.
Good question, Nicole. Eric has a follow on or somebody else?
Yeah, thank you. I do. Um, Sometime back in city council, we were discussing South Oroville, and again, going back to those smaller lots, so non-conforming, that we were going to work with that and possibly come up with 5 or 6 pre-approved, pre-engineered house plans that the city would purchase and make available, and to streamline a lot of the permitting processes and whatnot. I don't know where our planning department is on that project, but that was something that we discussed fairly significantly in council. So I don't know if
Wow.
that could, or if we get that across the finish line, uh, as the parts of the land that are obviously in the city limits that might be able to fit within this concept or model. So we identify a whole series or blocks of lots that would qualify for this type of high level city program that would streamline permitting, that would make available at no charge or very minimal charge the pre-approved plans, pre-engineered, ready to go. So you just pull it off the shelf and off you go.
Wow.
Great
That,
comment.
that is incredible. And this is a perfect example, Nicole, of what we were saying of how, just putting ourselves out there, just having this call, we now potentially have land to work with at a very low cost. San Diego is doing the same thing, LA County, giving land very cheap so that people can build affordable housing. It's a great model. And so these type of positioning is how we get the partnerships from the different areas of influence. Maybe we have a heavenly term or biblical term for it that we need in order to revitalize cities and as well as have maintaining securing the city, right? Securing the value, securing and sustaining and making it sustainable long term. So yes, I think we had other hands raised.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Lisa. Is there a bottom line for investors to come in at? Is there a minimum amount or because I have read a little bit that's usually it's about 25,000 and a lot of us in here may disqualify ourselves as the investor portion. However, if five families got together and there was a minimum, or 10 families got together in the community that are just middle class families, is that an option to be able to come in at an investor level as a group of people that want to see their community grow and are invested in this? Is that an option?
Yes, we want to have that discussion because we're looking at that was like a step 1.5 or step 1B, because you want to get the accredited investors in, and then usually like the SEC or FINRA will require you to have not that many unaccredited investors. For example, in an LLC, if we're a private offering, you can have like 20 non-accredited investors, and so yes, then you could have 20 people come together and be a significant investor in that, or you can do it through other special purpose vehicles and different ways in real estate that you can do that. So the key is we'll set a minimum for the fund that might be accredited investors only, but then we'll have because they're dealing with capital gains. So to invest in a qualified opportunity fund, you have to have capital gains first and foremost, anyways. And then we'll create the vehicle for the unaccredited as well as make sure it's a right fit from a project standpoint for the unaccredited as well. So we have a lot of experience in suitability for investors as well. So that's why we come here to represent as an asset manager, Father's House Community Land Trust, as well as who Father's House Community Land Trust serves its beneficiaries.
We have a responsibility to make sure that there's a real good upside for whoever gets involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that question, Lisa, that you just asked is really, really important because it will come up in the near future. It's just a matter of when. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you. It's a good question.
And before I pass the mic on to someone else, could you give a quick definition of an accredited investor?
Yes, sure. I think it's minimum income of, was it 200,000 in the last 3 years, as a married, I forget what it is, a single. I'll get that information up on the website, but most accredited investors know they are. But it's basically having a net worth, I believe, outside of your primary residence of over 1 million is another criteria. But there is another category, so there's a couple ways to qualify as well. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I want to ask a question from being a person that had to get the farm home loans way back in the day. How expensive are these tiny homes going to be for the people that are coming in?
Oh, great question. And this is something we've been talking to Pastor Steve about because we compare the cost of building on site to the cost of tiny homes manufactured in a factory. And I would say the cost of building in California is quite high. These tiny homes are usually under $100,000, up to 2 bedrooms. And so we will talk, but I think if we build them, I'm sure that cost would come from Steve, if we, from his construction experience. Steve, do you want to chime in or?
Well, the original project it would be more of a low income rented housing, but it depends on how big the investments are to be able to afford to split, uh, do the condominium type land, and setbacks and all of that. So it's almost impossible to know that number.
Yeah,
But with the purchase of those houses, the number that we were talking about, you would be under 100,000 with donated land. If you had donated money, of course, it goes
that's
down.
right.
But if you have invested return on investment money, then it goes up because you've
Yep.
got to provide the money back. You've got to recoup the money and pay it back with the return.
Right.
So
And so,
we
oh,
could
go
not
ahead.
know that here. We could not know
Yeah.
that.
Yes, precisely. So what I was quoting was the price of just the house. And so you also have to include the cost of installation and compare that to the cost of building on site as well, and
The
cost of
utilities are massive.
utilities.
Utilities would be
Utilities. Yep.
massive. So it'd
Yep.
be very hard to get under 100, but you'd be right in that range.
That's right. Yep. Yep. Once you add all that, and then like you said, you wouldn't if we're doing home ownership, you wouldn't necessarily buy the land. I think it depends on how we do it, if we do with or
Well,
without the land. And it depends on the project. Some projects may include the ability to get the land, others would not, right? And so that's kind of if it's in the trust, in the community land trust, then the community land trust retains the land ownership. But even the community land trust can sell a bit of land, and it can even have agreements where it says we'll repurchase that later. So it's quite flexible.
if I understand it, we just settle on a project,
Yep,
we develop the project, then you come up with the cost of the cost of doing business and how it all works out. Then you present that project to investors to get it funded, and then at that point you can start to look at price points and what you can actually offer to the community.
that's right.
It's way down the road.
Yeah, and I would say to y'all, by the way, from a project planning standpoint, right? Like we said, we're getting some legal lots, we're getting some other things going to get the initial project planning. And so that should be ready to a certain degree by the dinner. So if you have more questions on those type of specifics, you will get those beautifully at the dinner, so we can begin actually tackling the first project. Thank you.
Well
So
said.
this is Vicky. This is Vicky, and I think we probably should say when the investor dinner is. We probably should let
Yes.
people know that. And also with Eric, and I see Kristen, I think another city council member was on, another banker. It seems like with what Eric said, the ball seems to be rolling in a good way with the city council. So I'm just wondering what the next step would be with the city council. And I don't know if Eric is still there, but working in hand with them and with our track record in Southside, I think it'd be kind of a no brainer. So just wondering, city council, we want the city council involved, correct?
Yes.
Yep, come
Yeah,
to the
if you want me
dinner.
to speak to that
Yep.
briefly, I think it would be good to get together, Pastor Steve, and meet with our community development director, Patrick Hyatt, and have that conversation, to maybe identify some things, at least conceptually. And then, as I'd mentioned, some of those earlier conversations that we had at a council level, regarding how to move the South Side along, to attract investment. So there's definitely I guess the point is there's definitely an appetite, but as you've already mentioned, what do those projects look like? How can we streamline them, and how can we make them viable and attractive to to the investors? So yeah, but let's get together and put some meat to the bones.
Like it.
So, Vicky, are you comfortable with me mentioning the time and location and everything?
Yeah,
for
no,
our
I really
dinner?
want you to, because I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah. She's married to me.
I don't know all the details yet, Tim. Thank you,
All
though.
right. So we have a dinner planned as of right now, as of the time of this recording, for February. Hold on, I want to make sure.
13th. Yeah, go ahead.
13th at 6 o'clock. In person only. We're not going to be streaming anything or doing any of that. So you got to come in person for the delicious food
No
at
virtual lunch or dinner.
6 p.m. dinner at at the Orsillo's home. So for information about how to get there and exact details, please fill out that form on the website we gave to you earlier, restoreoroville.org/CLT. So we know that you're at least interested in membership, if not the investor dinner. We'll connect with you and make sure that we communicate with you based on you filling out that form. Okay.
Yes, great point. So membership form application is open. We'll be reaching out to those who apply with giving them the membership package and reviewing the applications for approval by the board. And if you're already volunteering and doing all that, you should definitely sign up immediately. At that point, there's no additional cost, or if you want to pay the $100 dues, we'll send you the membership package so you can get involved and begin to benefit. And I think we'll have a great, fun, close-knit community as well. And we all be doing some great community events over there that hopefully Tim and us will be flying in here and there, but very excited for launching the membership as well. Thank you for mentioning that, Tim.
Yep. I'll be I'm in Oroville 4 times a month, it seems like, just hanging out with my fam out there and kind of connecting. I consider Steve and Vicky to be mentors along the way as well. So there's a good connection there. And so any questions you have, we're working closely with the Father's House team and the actual community land trust team, and making sure we're all in communication around not only membership, but those who want to either invest or donate in some way, shape, or form, or like Eric's saying, just open doors to possibilities. So thank
Amen.
you, thank you, thank you. Any other questions as we wrap up today?
I think they need to know how to become members today.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. So restoreoroville.org/CLT. The form, you'll see there, apply now button at the very top. You'll also get you'll see all there a lot of the information. I believe once you fill the form, you'll also get the redirected to where there's a brochure. Otherwise, there's a second button where you can click on the website that says documents. And you can see the brochure of the Community Land Trust. You can see the slides from today and recap on all the good stuff going on. And so as soon as you fill out that form and you had a chance to review, we'll have had a chance to review your application and be starting to do membership activities in February, later February. Thank you for pulling up the website.
So if you get to this page, you're in the right place. Click on apply now, put your information in, and then we'll follow up with you.
Mm-hmm. And then the learn more button goes to today's presentation.
All right.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Wow. Excellent. So always love the questions, both times that we've done this. Pastor Steve, would you like to close us out?
Always.
Thank you.
But let me just say this about that. No, I'm kidding. Give me a mic and I go crazy. Anyway, let's just pray. Father, I pray that you help us record all the things we heard today and remember them, and that you come in to help us consider them and know what your plan is for us in this endeavor. Lord, bless CMG, bless the Father's House, bless all the people in this town who have a chance to be part of this. And Lord, most of all, help us help people in ownership, in ministry, in low income, in helping them, in reaching out to them. Help us, Lord, help them. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Yes.